fantastic.
And that was just ballerina. And then like last summer I went down to so like I got like a big
All right. Yeah.
How much is the new one?
It's 20.
Okay.
It's more than these are 15. And I have this, but of course I didn't get a chance to download the app, so I have PayPal.
Okay.
If I know they're students, so I know how it goes.
And I have a square.
Oh, let's do that, and then yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get my phone from over there now. I'll put it on this side. If you take any pictures from the
The
day,
mic is only for the video, by the way. Did they tell you that? So it's not for the room.
yeah. Okay, good. Remember.
Anyway, I interrupted you.
If you take any pictures from today, will you just send them so I have them?
Absolutely.
Thanks. And I'll put this over here.
Right, I guess we can
Yeah,
get started.
whenever you like.
Welcome to the Tabula Poetica reading series. This is the third in a series of visiting poets. We also have the MFA poetry reading on December 11th. That's another Tuesday at 7 p.m. And that is here as well in the Center for American War Letters of Letters Libraries. In addition, we are in the midst of getting flyers about a pilot called classroom that's on steps. And so we're gonna pilot a new idea, and on, see if I get the dates right here, on November 13th, is that a Tuesday? Double check. Okay, November 13th at 8:30 p.m. Carolyn Forche will be talking, and then on November 27th at 8:30 p.m. Rebecca Sloop will be talking. So we're trying that out. We just put that together. Put that in your calendar. If you want to know more about Tabula Poetica or all things poetry at Chapman University, you can go to our website, which is the university website /poetry. Please take a moment, pull out your phone, tweet, Instagram, Facebook. If you're here at Chapman University, Michelle Bidding having a great time. And then silence your phone so it doesn't make noise during the reading. Most of the support for the visiting poets this fall and most falls, and for the International Journal tab comes from the English department. I especially want to thank our department chair, Joanna Levin, who is at another event that got scheduled this evening. Our administrative assistants, Kristen Laxo and David Krausman. David Krausman is an alum of our MFA program, and he does all the behind-the-scenes logistics for Tabula Poetica. And our MFA graduate assistants, Meg Boyles, Matt Goldman, and Miriam Saeed. And both Meg and Miriam are here somewhere. So give them a round of applause. In addition, Leatherby Libraries, of course, has been incredibly supportive, and poets and writers gives us small grants to help bring writers into our community. I first met Michelle Bidding in person when we read together in Los Angeles, and today is the first time I've really spent much time with her. In between the poetry talk and now, she's done a podcast for Anastamos, so that'll be up in a few weeks. And then we kind of hung out. And one of the things that I was impressed with was the way she talked about teaching literature. And she's teaching modern and contemporary poetry. She's starting with the most recent, with the most contemporary, and then looking at the predecessors instead of following it chronologically forward. And I think that ability to look at what exists and mix it up, change it, look at it differently is part of what I like about Michelle Bidding's poetry as well. Michelle has a PhD in mythological studies, and if you were at the poetry talk this afternoon, you heard about how some of those ideas connect with her ideas about what it means to be a poet and what it means to write, what the process means. She's now teaching at Loyola Marymount University, and she's the poet laureate of Pacific Palisades. Her first book, Good Friday Kiss, won the De Novo Poetry First Book Award, and her poems have been published widely in journals, anthologies, Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, and so on and so forth. And that first book is available. She has a couple of copies here of that and her other books, in case you're interested in taking a look at that. Her poem, Everything Crumbling Becomes Something New, which she talked about in really interesting ways this afternoon, won the Mark Fisher Poetry Prize from the Telluride Institute this year. So it's a new prize-winning poem. It's available online. You can also see it when we post the video of the poetry talk. The Couple Who Fell to Earth is the book we've been reading here at Chapman University. It was published in 2016 by C&R Press and was one of Kirkus Review's best books that year. U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera calls it a unique treasure of visions and voice. Michelle Bidding writes with Dante and Doc Martens, asks us to taste French food and gasoline, shows us Jesus and Claude Rains as versions of the same image. The opening poem in this book compares marriage to gardening and says bluntly, beauty needs no apology. The book ends with an epiphany, titled Epiphany, a person waking early, struck by a strange knowing, and and walking outside in pajamas to see the still dark sky lit with a few bright stars. Unapologetic beauty and strange knowing so happen all along in this marvelous collection. Jericho Brown said, "This book is all heart." I disagree. This book is all heart and all mind, because the two cannot be separated, and the balance or the interplay that Michelle Bitting has achieved underlies her vision and her voice in these poems. Michelle has a new book just out, and Kirkus Review said very, very positive things today about this book, Broken Kingdom. It won the Catamaran Prize. Look at this book. She has copies. Isn't it gorgeous? Okay, so
You can touch it too.
there's this, and this, and then there's all these poems inside. If you have $20 tonight, this is what you should do with it. She's going to read some poems from both these books, I think, and I look forward to hearing some of the new poems. Please welcome Michelle Bitting.
What a wonderful, gorgeous introduction, Anna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chapman, students and poets, for bringing me here. It's really, really a treat to be here. Are you all poets? Yeah, right on. Okay. I like to begin with the recitation. I'm going to, this is Blessing the Boats by Lucille Clifton. May the tide that is entering even now, the lip of our understanding, carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind and turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail through this, through that. Blessing the Boats, Lucille Clifton. And now I'm going to read a poem that came out on Love's Executive Order. Matthew Lippman was generous and lovely and published this poem. It's called Tender Cages. It's a timely poem. When the baby first comes home, all pink-lipped and gooey-eyed, you lay her down tenderly, not wanting to startle raw nerves, new bones, all 206 still pliable, this being good because, like dough, may shape into anything, according to comfort, milk, a view of the sky she'll reach towards someday, the flexibility of freshness that can also go wrong, depending on circumstance, on creed, on accident, on discriminating harm. Her fierce little fist arose in a thunderstorm outside the tent of placenta. That wild red sea beats its music within, its primitive own. We, just the keepers, gifted jobs of protection, of giving her a chance to grow her delicate core, slippery with rain, a musk-milled forest. So to not shield her most intimate places, where spirits huddle like small animals sorting it out, to not swear allegiance, no harm will come, to not pass a hand over the crevice of her crown, we can all agree to that, right? Some spots too tender to be left exposed would be a crime, would cut you in half. you'd scream bloody murder. We can all agree where babies are concerned, disruption must be avoided. Anything that rips, opens, or tears apart limbs, life, lines, marking permanent damage. An eruption, for instance, at a point in the poem, can ruin everything. The heart, a winched away wing, severed from the body, from the song of its mama, tumbles across a windy desert, carried we know not where. Maybe some kinder flower catches its edge, feeds it a little shade, a little mercy. Maybe, for a moment, we really don't know where to shelter from this imposter sun, so clearly set on turning us to dust. At the talk today, somebody asked about when you're ready to write about something. And I don't have a definitive answer, but I can say that some things take a while, and you take notes on it and you prepare to write about it. Maybe you're able to write about it right away. I know that this poem about my brother, who was an artist, amazing, incredible painter and poet, who died a couple decades ago now. It took a good 5-7 years for me to write this poem, and it ended up being a breakthrough poem for me as a writer. And it's from my first collection, Good Friday Kiss. It's called Trees. My mother worries about trees in my yard, the eucalyptus, their overgrown heads, how a bold October wind could roll the leaf-heavy blankets down to smother us, curled in our sleep. She's minus a son already, so statistics on falling trees are meaningless. She moves a beat ahead of doom's grim boot. Men arrive with ropes and saws. A whisper chipper settles in, blocks half the driveway. As the first sweeps of lopped green drop from the sky, startling the lawn, I can't help but think of my brother, his long, beautiful hair, honey brown in summer, falling across tanned cheeks every girl in school longed to taste, an athlete's torso they dreamed of exercising. When he died, I drove with my parents to the stuffy Tudor on Montana Avenue, where he became a box of dust, soft and gray as rabbit ears. The stiff man in pinstripes handed my father a sack. "The clothes your son was wearing," he said, apologizing. Steering home, we pulled over to review the balled-up t-shirt, sweatpants, underwear, suicide rags, his great escape suit. And it was then, seeing how little was left, bringing my brother home in a paper bag, I saw my father lurch, topple forward, his heart tumbling down, catching ours with the crush of it. And I knew there was no point in scurrying or calling for help. We could never get out of the way. So you've been reading The Couple Who Fell to Earth, and I'm going to turn now to The Couple Who Fell to Earth, and I'm going to read the eponymous poem from this collection, The Couple Who Fell to Earth. We went flying without a map, as naked astronauts often do. The borders of our bodies blended into one, an erosion of planets and vaporized stars. We hurtled through space and burned up, entering. Please forgive this clumsy beauty, no more than grains of dust, moon debris, a streak of light. We land and make a circle, a cornucopia in the crop, and the heat of our hips bores down, carving a cradle, the perilous pit, the stone fruit heart of human fire. The body loves what it loves, and we can't stop it. We become an O around. We become the snake itself, the Rosetta coil, the upper room. We are flag and stigmata, the ship set sail, the smoking orifice, the holy divot and buried cup. Lips to each other's eyes, we will seal our demons in, the flowering trees and muddy gardens of our Eden-scorched mouths. Crowns tossed to the breeze, the honeycomb bleeding gold, and queen's poison darts. We have watched the fountain grass, felt their glowing spines shoot through us. The mournful wheat heads made of glass trace a cross on the cistern tomb. And to think we slept through it all, though the dream kept smacking us with every surge of the sea's cold blade. We are the lion and the lamb, the tooth in the flesh, flaming halo and silken curl, the wounded bird and coming ecstasy, this kingdom we've built till death do us part. By the way, there is a typo on page, I want to clear this up for once and for all, on page 26. Perhaps your copies, they were supposed to change it. It should say, the second to last line, it should say surprising, even Kevlar material used in the making of bulletproof vests. If it still says Kelvin, that is incorrect. Now it will make more sense. All right. I'm going to read How Like Marriage is the Season of Flowers. Now, this book, as a lot of poetry books do, as it does go, was in another manifestation originally. It was a chapbook. It was called How Like Marriage is a Season of Flowers, which is a riff on a line from James Merrill called Cloud Country. And so I changed it a little bit, and that was what sort of set the poem off and running. That, and feeling really in the thick of it, as in our sort of domestic scene with all kinds of problems and crises, and then this just by myself out in the garage, smoking a cigarette, opening up the broken refrigerator and finding the remnants of our babies up on the top of the fridge, and then it just went from there. I had no idea what the poem was going to be about, and I kind of believe in that. You just start writing. You don't sit down to write a poem. You just sit down to write, see what happens. Because I'd forgotten I'd shoved that wrinkled bulb into a slit of dubious soil that last winter, just as I'd lost sight of it buried under a decade of rust and oil in the garage we haven't cleaned since the summer our daughter was born. Some seasons prove more hazardous than others, and one wind-thrashed night, I groped for a stray cigarette from the grime atop the busted refrigerator we used to store light bulbs and toilet paper, slipped my fingers into a filthy halo of booster seats and nursing pillows, formula bottles and plastic bathing tub, and pulled out a crumpled baggie of bulbs. Now the garden gnome winks through a lattice cross of immaculate light, so smug in his weird cone hat and Santa coat, his bed of broad conceptions, stigma and stamen, the once frozen loam having cracked like an egg, the stone exterior unrolled, the barracks collapsed, and out slithered this serpent of a single red bloom like a prisoner climbing the roof of the impossible panopticon, and lighting a match to herself becomes a flag of fire in the moon's glowing lake. Good night. Death had not dominion after all. If Christ rose, no one really knows how he managed to wade through all that festering, flying from tomb to feather clouds, do they? Beauty needs no apology. We could never explain the crumbling citadel transformed to Easter morning goodie basket, blue lace and tangerine jelly beans, nor the scary bunny heads my husband and I sometimes wore, spitting bitter carrots into the whites of each other's eyes. The garden is a Chagall guarded by worms in the vaults of subterranean ruins. The horses, delirious from so long in the desert of no water, their mouths turn to mines of glittering salt and make pictures. A woman wakes and sees a girl wandering the yard, remembers hiding treasure once and pretending to find it as if for the first time, as if pulling a bouquet from the barrel of a hat, from slugs and dirt, the miserable bottom, your darkest places imaginable. I'll come back to that book in a minute. I'm going to read a poem from Notes to the Beloved. So this is a good example, this poem, of kind of taking an object and breaking it open, shattering it open, and finding all kinds of worlds, things inside that you didn't expect. Also, this was one of those poems where we did it in a group, sort of cross country, where we have some poet colleagues. We sent, somebody came up with random words, some good solid nouns and verbs, and a couple of prompts. I can't remember exactly what they were. And then we had to write a poem. So I wrote this several years ago, and you'll recognize it's a tribute. It's a kind of an ode to this person. And this is called His Hat. Anyone can wear a pork pie, don a jaunty straw boater or felt fedora, crook the hound's tooth lip of a mini Stetson over a martini-flogged eye and blot the day's sun, its blistering news. But if you are Johnny Depp, your hat is more than a statement of style, more than a rakish blend of old and pop world panache, more than a plaid bucket, a hobo pan inverted, a drapery cage to quiet the inner flutter of your imaginary world. It is the devil's haberdashery, the kind reserved for a breed of noble idiot, of holy jester, with enough ink in his royal aura to grease the stations of the cross. You are the perfect modern imposter, barber, sailor, mobman, chocolate maker, and your timeless face of stopped clock beauty, the milk bone stalk of your neck, the broken worm mustache and fuzzy goatee, horn-rimmed glasses that frame your Buster Keaton peeps, your silly swagger and beggar's humility sweeten the sting of everyday living. Johnny, if you can hear this, know I've got your button pinned to my heart, and I'll do what it takes. Brave the high, salty seas, ride the wing of your private jet as it caroms between Paris and the Bahamas. I'm here to hold you up. Whatever finery you may be sporting, honey, I've got an excellent rack. A little humor. I wrote it a few years ago. Things have changed for Johnny Depp, I realize. But it was just like words, just and fun, really fun. Just poetry, it's play, it is really fun. And you never know where it's going. Okay. I will read Lupercalia from this book. This is a poem about my older son, and he has high-functioning autism, and it was really, really hard for a long time. And he's incredible. He's a wonderful artist and a great person. And I've worried for him and had incredible experiences with him, and I will read another poem about him in my latest book, because it's all, like all of our stories, we keep coming back to them and rewriting them in new ways, also through new lenses, and so, but at this moment I was struggling a bit. And now it's called Lupercalia. Lupercalia is a pre-Roman festival, ancient, It's around the time of Valentine's Day. Shakespeare talks about it, I think, in Julius Caesar. And it's where people would sort of go crazy, and there was nudity and frolicking and ritual and sacrifice, of course, and kind of like Mardi Gras, yeah? And it was to purge the sins of the city and prepare to move forward. Lupercalia. The Ides of February are brutal. Love's sticky sentiments gumming up the air make it harder to breathe. Gilded truffles, snug in their cellophane tombs, dare you to pluck them from underworlds and eat. Hearts dangle in pharmacy windows, pretending to pump real red. Brutal for a boy who feels but won't say what it is to be 16 and never one secret admirer, never a glitter doily or silver hallmark waxed with lipstick smoky kisses. What ghost can this mother conjure? What diaphanous caress? When in Rome, and if long ago, I could run naked through alleyways, my breasts swinging like fevered trolls, like devil bells bared, tolling Resident Evil. I could don a goatskin cap, carry my pot of flames to the desert, burn salted meal cakes with Vestal virgins, and raise them to the stars, to dead crows and broken Caesars. But it wouldn't change the fact of his incomplete beauty, how girls turn away when he opens his mouth to speak a sound less than smart. Won't change the fact of his gawky bust and uncommon sense and art far too wild and no longer cradled in the cave of a darkened living room where once we rocked and he suckled, at times stopped to let glide the nipple from his mouth and look up at me, just look at me, his future, his mother and unconditional lover, his only Valentine. All right. Who here likes Frank OHara? Who's heard of Frank OHara? All right. What Frank OHara poem do you like?
Having a cold.
What?
Mitchell.
Yeah, I like that one too. Have you ever read the Personism?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. It's always a good refresher, reminder. Go back and just read that and like reboot, right? Yeah. So I'm going to read this poem, Joni Mitchell is Not Unconscious. And this is an emulation poem of Frank OHara's Lana Turner Has Collapsed. So if you know the poem Lana Turner Has Collapsed, it kind of follows the structure of that poem. I'm a very big Joni Mitchell fan. Joni Mitchell is not unconscious. She hasn't fallen into the coma those nasty tabloids suggest. She's alert and well and sitting up in her bed at Cedar Sinai. I was walking on the promenade in the land of palm trees in St. Monica, where sun and blue shade duke it out, wending a path between bass clef and treble. And then I saw it, Joni Mitchell in a coma, and I said, no, not her. Maybe it's true she's been a recluse for half the century in her pink Bel Air mansion, Our Lady of the Spanish Canyon, where she chain smokes and is paranoid of everybody, especially the invisible parasites like colorful, irritable fibers. She really did say that. She's convinced bloody her skin, make her tear all her clothes off and slither like wind on ceramic tiles. Who wouldn't believe aliens were camping in your private parts when there's paparazzi spying from the hydrangea everywhere you go? There is no rain in California, and I have been to Hollywood parties and done perfectly disgraceful things, but Joni Mitchell is not unconscious. She is still here in the in-between, going up and down like her melodies make us when the heart is shadows and light and we are desperate to be forgiven. Oh, Joni, keep singing. We need that nothing gray about you. All right. Okay, well then, I'm going to read On OHara's Birthday, since we'll just go right from that to On OHara's Birthday in Broken Kingdom. So this is a poem I wrote for my friend Matthew Dickman, who loves Frank OHara, and reminds me of that, like a descendant of that New York school kind of Frank OHara's poetry. And we'd been hanging out. He was here for reading and house sitting in the Hollywood Hills, and then I wrote this poem called On OHara's Birthday. The sun behind the hills is a big bald head, as Laurie Anderson once put it, and the wind so fierce last night it whipped the feeder from its wire, so the squirrels got to gorge on thistle seed all morning, leaping Errol Flynn style from branch to ledge to Adirondack seat. Whatever gullible shapes that got in their way smashed, mirroring my rage, stuck here in the trough of stormy times, where the president says, grab all you can. The book of decency and illusion. See, he has no clothes, strolls a Midtown Avenue, waving his shaft in God's face. The tunnels of our ears, internment camps, our bodies passed out on the collective human cot, wings pass over, an extermination of the soul. Yes, I said the soul. I know it's indulgent, like cupcakes. But I like cupcakes on anyone's birthday. Real buttercream frosting and authentic wild vanilla. The risen batter ribbon with flecks of shaved bean, like little black bells ringing the steeples of your taste buds, calling you back home, wherever that is, in case you can't remember the place of sweetness. Oh Lord, let us please feel innocent again. All right. So this book is like all my books. It's personal. It's my immediate life, my domestic life, being a wife, a mother, a poet, a person struggling through the days, and then it's also responding to what is going on and some of those things coming together and clashing or colliding, and also the work I've done with my mythological studies, definitely in-depth psychology coming into it too. So I said I was going to read another poem about my elder son. So this is another poem about kind of coming off of Lupercalia, and this is some years later. So this is called Sometimes I Want to Look Away. Sometimes I want to look away, but I never look away. To say we measure progress according to the weather doesn't come close to expressing my newfound passion for plumbing, or how tonight I watched the backs of my son and husband bent over a stopped-up bathroom sink, side by side, ungunking the suspect pipes plugged with mucus, hair, and the gooey red tooth gel both teens use. I know you don't get it. The significance, two grown males toiling in tandem, and the boy's solemn calm as his father unscrews an elbow joint and they peer down into a cruddy abyss, black with festered fluid and artificial flavors, the rose-scented lotion my girl slathers on her arms. This is where it goes, how we all end up, corroded fluids and epidermis, protein curlicues, cuticles, and eyelash flakes so lovely and aromatic once, like the way a baby smells of yeast and rosemary fresh from the oven, the center moist, the edges golden, the surface buttered with cream and salt. The way it's supposed to be in the beginning, but was not with this boy, now a man holding a wrench and an appetite to learn, a patience for mechanical mishaps hard won over time after eons of volcanic fits. I couldn't bear it almost, and we barely survived. You would not have wanted to be there, would have asked to avert your eyes, but I could not. Little luxury until now, 18 years after. Father and son clearing the pipes, the labor, the baby, and a decades-long birth. I'm telling you, shit never smelled so sweet. I will read 2 more poems. Is that good? And then if anybody really wants me to read something from The Couple Who Fell to Earth, another one, I can do that. So I read this at the talk today. I'm going to read it again. This is Everything Crumbling, Becoming Something New. This poem, I've referenced my son and then my daughter, but my daughter is now, my daughter was Vera Rose and is now Emmett. And that just happened in the last couple of years. And so I'm going to read this poem. And I did talk about it today at length at the lecture. Everything Crumbling, Becoming Something New. When my baby told me she wanted to be a boy, some part of me had to die, slip away like good mourners do, politely monk-like, the mother of monasteries, drowning myself, my crushed head, a vat of liquid smoke, tasting of saffron, paint, letting it choke me, taking up the green knife, the Spain in me. I was born to slice myself into little infinite mirror stabs. Cracked again, I'd have to fall on it, muffle my cries, rushing wings of birdsong memory, the hours dusky passing, my girl taking off, changing form, mid-flight, misty vestiges shed, letting her go so a sun could enter, letting it go, just as we did your every dress, cave of my closet's hearkening, skirts and gold-flecked minis, the black velvet strapless, poofs of yellow tulle, even the blue taffeta from the chic boutique in the Jewish quarter, where the old Algerian in fedora and double-breasted suit directed us back to the Seine, walking us halfway there, his simple kindness, wanting to slap myself, my American offense, offering money, his eyes crushed blossoms, where I come from, another shade of green gets worshipped, more than being human. Imagine selling your birthright, America, my mess of pottage. Imagine giving birth all over again, the two of you going through it again, child, woman, now man, all your multitudes. I'm learning to sing you, little green, little shorn-headed hero, your mother an orphan, shrouds for my gone girl, my vanity, my mirage, a desert of selves, boundless and bare, we bury ourselves, thinking greater than a shattered visage. Not you, your fledgling harmonies, bold your beauty, your many within, sometimes sad, sometimes scary refrains. Thank you for teaching me to listen. Sounds, who knew I? No, who knew you could make? I think I'll end there.
Anyone want an encore from the couple who fell from Earth?
Do you want? Should I read I Don't Want a Funeral? That's pretty intense. I know you're filming this one. Yes.
And then while you're doing your request and while she's reading the encore, think of your questions and we'll have some.
Yeah, perfect, yes.
Could you read Recycled Colosseum?
Great.
I also have a question afterwards.
afterwards.
Okay. I wrote this on my kitchen floor,
Oh,
listening
I thought it was
to.
about being in the kitchen.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
where a lot of that happens a lot on the floor, in the car, and wherever I can write. And I was listening to I think it was a PBS radio about the 40 Years War. Yeah, I think I mentioned that in this. 50 years. 50 Years War. Thank you. Okay, what page is that?
21.
Okay. Recycled Colosseum. That gray lump of clay skulked in a wicker corner of the kitchen more than a week before my hands would have at it. So much to take down first. Decaying arches, old rolls long played in the family crypt. In between, there were soups to brew for aging parents, the dreadful meats they'd trained me to hunt. So much to clean, toxic-free. Who will explain this? I'm no sculptor, void of required skills, more a wrangler of raw softness, devastated waste. When the moment to make came, I had faith the gnashing exotics would outsmart their chains, toss off rusted links and cuffs. Just a matter of when. I kept going as they rose up, bared tusks and claws, a sea of furrowed manes and exoskeletons under wobbly arenas. Not knowing which would prove more crucial, time or materials, I threw myself to the kitchen floor and forced gaunt palms to gray flame, earthly oblivion, taking as cue to begin when the radio clicked on, streaming tales of the 50 Years' War. Everything's a sign or corrosive. Even the sun will turn, book covers white as senators' robes, whispering down damp arcades. Now the gladiator takes to the stage, 5 pale fingers curled together into a fist as the crowd roars on, to thrust and then unfurl, merciful as flowers flying. Strands of silt I tear to make something bare, entirely new. Lit up in the end, you'll see one shape, a home minus the killing, but made from the dead.
So we have time for a few questions and answers. And because we're video recording, if you could repeat the question
Yes,
before you answer,
absolutely.
that would be great.
Uh-huh.
Elizabeth, did you have an immediate follow-up for that poem?
Oh, no, it was question was answer. I was asking about the kitchen, if it was like about
Yeah.
the kitchen or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was actually sculpting something for a class. I was working on my PhD in mythological studies, and I had to create something. So there's just
I thought it was a
strange
cooking
things that
mistake.
come in it. What's that?
I thought it was a cooking mistake.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of those too. I was a chef. I was a line cook for a number of years. Yeah.
All right, other
It's in there
questions?
too. Yeah.
How has your sense of place been affected by your understanding of mythology?
My sense of place.
Yeah, like how you understand a city or even a kitchen.
Been affected by mythology.
Yeah, because in mythology there are those, like the Iliad is about Troy, and the Bible in a certain sense is about the Promised Land and all those ideals.
Right. Well, in my new book especially, I sort of make myself Odysseus and Penelope both. And I think about that, and then I think about my family and where I came from and my parents, and I think about Anne Carson and how the idea that the Odyssey it's actually just a dream that Penelope and Odysseus are having. So I try and go to those very strange, dreamy places without it being contrived. So it has something to do with something I'm also trying to excavate or figure out. So there's some sort of emotion behind it as well. But yeah, I think that's why. I think there aren't very many places where you can do that kind of intensive study in mythology, and I think there are a lot of, it gets a bad rap, right? Because really mythology is, when it's really real mythology, it lives forever, or it's done, it's a dead mythology, and so we have to keep going, what was that about, and why does that continue? Why is that motif continuing, or where are those impulses, or what are those archetypes, or is that an archetype, or is that even a real thing anymore? And maybe we need to take that and change it, right? And so yes, think about that a lot. And I just feel like I've just hit like the tip of the iceberg, and that's why with the mythological studies, it's very much about world religions and also mythology in contemporary culture, and as well as ancient cultures, ritual, theater, critical studies, and what lenses and who decided and what is that, and yeah, it's endless. And I think it's like really important right now, too. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask how your writing is impacted or influenced by the current political climate.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it is.
Yes. Yeah. And so then the challenge is how to write about it in a way that is as powerful and effective as you can, and which is so hard. And that's why I talked about Carolyn Forshey today in that poem, Memories of Milena, right? And how she it's devastating how she talks about what happened in Argentina, right? And what happened to her friend, and how she does it in a way that isn't, this is what happened and all these people were killed and disappeared, and but you feel it's in a really sickening, visceral way, which is what you want to have happen. If somebody just stands up there saying, this is what's happening and what is terrible, then it's not going to be as effective. And it's hard, especially when there's such an onslaught. It's very, very difficult. You write through the personal. Right? You write it and find a way into it. And I talked about that in Everything Crumbling too. By going through that, then it opened out and it becomes the speaker realizes some things about herself and about her world and her country, and I wish that would happen more. It's a blessing when it does. Yes.
Do you think that your PhD has sort of changed the way that you approach poems and the subject matter?
Well, not the PhD. I mean, the intensive study. Yeah. Yes. And so the question is, has the work in the PhD and the mythological studies changed how the poetry and how I see things and write things? I'm sorry.
Sort of influence the subject matter or how you come up with ideas?
Yes, and so how I come up with ideas. So yes, especially when I was heavily into the writing, and that's a whole book, that's a whole wall of books. And now I'm teaching, I'm very into poetics and poetry, and that stuff is coming and helping with my teaching. But I also would like to go and back to write, because there's so much more. But it also needs to, with an awareness of it not being something sort of esoteric and separate. Some of it is, and so I'm always looking to see how people are coming back to that, but writers do, poets do constantly go back to, and current mythologies, I think. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Kind of? So, right. Yeah.
Describe your path to publication, either with the new book or with Tabula Poetica.
So, like just in general, like getting published? Or, well, it's been a...
Useful for us.
Right. Make sure you have a really solid body of work first. I would say that I probably started sending out poems a little sooner than I needed to, because I would, and it doesn't matter now. I don't care if people find them. I don't even think they're so far like the internet. I don't even know. But wait until you have a really solid group of poems, and then make sure you're sending to places where you really like the work, and read the people that they're publishing, and right. And see if those are poets, they're poems that you admire and that feel like it could be a good home for your poetry, but it's not. And also don't be afraid either. My first teacher said, I'm not doing this I want my voice to be heard. I want to put something out there. And I think that's important too. Is there something like specific that you want to ask? Because I could go on and on. I mean, I could do a whole thing on publishing.
I know everybody's experience of getting published, even every book, is completely different from one another's.
Right. So those were individual poems I was really referring to as far as publication goes. The book my first book, Thomas Lux, who I loved so much, chose it. It was a book prize. It was a pretty early on book prize, and so I had a better chance. The ones where there are a couple of thousand people submitting, and that's when you really want to make sure that you're submitting a manuscript that is where the poems, you really know that they're solid and that they've individually gotten published in good journals and stuff. Unless you're some kind of like genius or something, and you've just created something amazing and you haven't done the public. That does happen. And also chapbooks, right? Chapbooks are good. A shorter book. I mean, even great poets, when they first start out, they don't usually put out a really long book first. Short and sweet, Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about moving from, okay, I have a bunch of poems, to, okay, this is actually a book manuscript?
Right. Well, that's, again, the beauty of a chapbook. You don't have to worry so much about the total arc and and different sections, and which is going to take a while of writing to have that, where there's variety and you can have sections, and there's maybe you're even playing with different you're crossing genres a little bit, and you are experimenting with other, there's prose poems, and then there's more kind of aerated lyrical poems, and there are the stanza poems, and and you have to, you either have to have a really rich subject matter that you are that you're trying to illuminate or you're digging into, or you have to have some time go by, right, to write those poems. Depends if you're going for a subject, a book that's kind of following a subject, or you are sort of deconstructing something, or sort of turning some kind of history or story or narration kind of on its head, and then going through your own personal kind of lens with that. But if you're writing from your life, it takes some time, right, to develop those poems. But if you have a really grand concept, and you can divide it into different sections and have it develop, then I would say you have a book. But mostly, I think when you're first starting out, the chapbook. Most people start with a chapbook. Does that answer? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there something more specific you're trying to?
No, that's.
Yeah. What's the prevailing concern? Is there a lot of concern about publishing? You're just writing. Just write, right? Just you're young and you got time.
Well, the BFA students have to do a thesis project, and that doesn't have to be. It's revised work that they've done all along the way. The BFA students do a thesis, and I often talk with them about how the thesis isn't the book, but it is a way to think about.
Right. Okay. So Notes to the Beloved was before I did my master's and PhD in mythological studies, I did an MFA, in my sort of midlife crisis. I started writing when I wrote back in college. I've always been in the arts, been in theater, I've been a professional dancer and all this stuff. And I'd always written, but I really got into it after I had my kids, and that was like in my mid-30s. And I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and then started to have some breakthroughs with the publishing, and then I won this book award. And then I went off to do an MFA. And so this was my MFA thesis, but maybe half the poems in here were in my thesis. The rest of those thesis poems got dumped eventually. And it also was called... It was called The Desirous Act of Looking, the book, the thesis. So I had a book from it, but it didn't.
What did it take between finishing the MFA thesis and the book?
Well, this came out in 2011, 2012. I finished the MFA in 2009.
Okay.
So it took a few more years of writing more poems, dumping half the thesis poems, and then,
Mine took 9 years, so yours.
The book I'm working on now, I'm about 12 poems into it. It's called Red Orpheus, and since I've put out 2 books in the last few years, which is, I've never expected to do that, just happened. But now I'm like, I'm going to take my time. Yeah, it's no rush. Because you want to feel really good about the work.
Any other questions? I have one final question.
Yes.
At the poetry talk, you talked about other writers that you've been reading, other poets you've been reading, and you talked about the poets you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Who are 2 or 3 poets that you think our students should probably be reading, and why those 2 or 3?
Oh, like from a while ago or from contemporary, like right now?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, that's so hard. Okay. I do really love Natalie Diaz, and I also love what she teaches about poetry and writing. And I love Dennis Smith right now so much, and everything that he's saying and doing. And Kava Akbar is great. Solmaz Sharif, yeah. And I really love right now Safia Sinclair. Her book Cannibal, she won the Prairie Schooner Book Prize. Have you heard of her?
I think I just came across one of her poems.
Yeah. She's really, really great. Bianca Stone who is Ruth Stone's granddaughter. She just had a poem in the New Yorker last week that was really good called Nature. And she has, I think Tin House just did her book, The Mobius Strip Club of something. Yeah. And she's an artist as well.
All right, well, thank Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for coming so much.
We have some marvelous food over here that you should come snack on. We have some books for purchase if you're interested in purchasing a book. And if you have any other individual questions.
Yeah, I'll just stay right here.
For a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We can unmic you.
Oh, yeah.